The hospital lobby went silent the moment the doors slammed open so hard the glass shuddered. A freezing gust of wind swept in, carrying the scent of smoke and something far worse, fear. Then the whispers started. Carryin Ward, America's coldest billionaire, the man whose face never cracked on TV, stumbled inside with a woman limp in his arms. A dark-skinned woman in a torn uniform. Blood on her cheek. Barely breathing. His voice shattered the silence. "Somebody help me. She's dying." All the nurses froze. Visitors backed away. Everyone stared like they couldn't understand what they were seeing. A billionaire carrying his black maid like she was the only human being in the world. "Move!" Carryin roared. His voice cracked mid-word. "Please, please, someone, she's dying." Still, nobody moved. Nobody but me. I pushed through the shock-frozen crowd just as Carryin collapsed to his knees, clutching her closer like he was afraid the air might steal her last breath. "Stay with me," he begged her, shaking. "Please, Marvel, don't leave me too." Her head rolled back. Her eyes fluttered. And in that moment, as I reached them, I saw something that made my blood run cold. A deep, dark bruise on her arm. A handprint. Too large to be a woman's. The billionaire looked up at me, desperate, broken, terrified. "Help her," he whispered. "I can't lose her." And that was how my nightmare began. Before we start our story, do me one favor. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. I love knowing how far these stories reach. It means more than you know. My name is Avery Linnell, and I was 25 years old the morning the hospital turned to stone. I had just finished my third night shift as an intern at Hillsborough General, a quiet community hospital tucked between old red brick neighborhoods and half-empty strip malls. My feet ached, my eyes burned, and I was dreaming of my bed when the sliding doors burst open like someone had kicked them. And that was when the whole lobby froze. A tall man in a charcoal suit, dust, sweat, and panic all over him, stumbled inside carrying a woman in his arms. Not just anyone. Carryin Ward, the billionaire who owned half the tech companies on the East Coast. I had only ever seen him on TV, looking untouchable and cold. But right now, he didn't look powerful. He looked broken. And in his arms was a woman, beautiful, dark-skinned, maybe early 30s, her head limp against his shoulder. Her name was Marvel, though I didn't know that yet. All I saw was blood and bruises around her face, and the way Carryin held her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. "Somebody help me," he shouted, his voice shaking. But instead of rushing forward, the lobby staff hesitated. A nurse dropped her pen. Another stepped back. People stared, confused by seeing a billionaire carrying his black maid in his arms like family, like she mattered more than money. I saw the ugly mix of shock, judgment, and fear twisting across faces. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Not until Carryin's voice cracked. "She's dying. Do something." I ran forward before my brain caught up. Training kicked in. "Sir, put her on the gurney. Slowly, yes, like that." I checked her airway, pulse, pupils. Her breathing was faint, shallow, fading. Her ribs looked bruised. My hands trembled as I worked, but I didn't let them stop. "What happened to her?" one of the older nurses asked carefully, her tone the kind people use when they already suspect something dark. Carryin swallowed hard. His jaw tightened. His eyes were red, desperate. "Someone attacked her. Someone tried to kill her." The room erupted. Gasps, whispers, nurses buzzing like frightened bees. Someone paged trauma, someone else called security. But every eye stayed locked on Carryin and the woman he carried in like she was his whole heart. I checked her again and felt heat rise in my chest. On her forearm, under the smear of dirt and blood, was a bruise shaped like a handprint, big, deep, violent. Not an accident. Not even close. Carryin leaned over me, his voice barely above a whisper. "Please, don't let her die." I opened my mouth to answer, but before I could, Marvel's body jerked violently, just once, and her eyes rolled back. The heart monitor screamed its alarm. The steady beep turned into one long, terrible sound. A flat line. My breath caught. "Hey! If this part already pulled you in, go ahead and hit that like button. Share this story with someone who loves a good twist. And make sure you subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Trust me, it only gets wilder from here. People always think hospitals are loud, that they are full of shouting doctors and beeping machines. But the truth is, most nights they are quiet. Too quiet. You hear your own thoughts more than anything else. That's probably why I remember the moment Cassie and Ward carried Marvel in so clearly. It wasn't just the shock of seeing a billionaire holding a maid like she was a priceless treasure. It was the way everything inside me tightened, like the world had just shifted into a place I didn't understand. But before that moment, before the screaming and the alarms, I was just Avery Linnell, a tired intern who kept telling herself she wasn't going to fail. I grew up in a rundown blue house on the corner of Wyatt Street, where the wind always whistled through the cracks in the windows and the neighbors blasted music until 3 in the morning. My mom worked 2 jobs, and my dad left when I was 6. I'm biracial, my mom is white, my dad black, and in our neighborhood, that made me different, but I never knew whether that was supposed to be good or bad. Mostly, it just made me lonely. But I always had one dream: become a doctor. Help people. Give someone the kind of care my own family never had. So when I got accepted into Hillsborough General's internship program, I hugged my acceptance letter until the ink smudged. My mom cried for a full 10 minutes straight. I told myself I'd make her proud. But no class, no childhood struggle, nothing could have prepared me for what I saw the morning Marvel arrived. After the flatline, after the chaos, after the trauma team rushed her into emergency room 3, they left me to document the visible injuries. My hands were still shaking from the adrenaline. The room felt too bright, too cold, too small for what had just happened. Marvel lay there unconscious, her chest rising and falling with the help of machines. Up close, she looked younger, soft curls against her cheeks, long lashes, delicate features. She looked like someone who should have been laughing with friends, not fighting for her life on a metal table. I swallowed hard and lifted her arm gently to photograph the bruises. And that's when I saw it. A mark on her upper forearm. Dark purple. Angry. Spreading across her skin like it had been burned into her. A bruise shaped like a handprint. But not a woman's hand. No way. This one was huge, so wide I could almost fit both my hands inside the outline. The fingertips dug deep into her skin, like whoever grabbed her didn't just want to hurt her. They wanted to crush her. My heart pounded against my ribs. I glanced at the door, half expecting someone to be standing there watching me. My throat felt tight, but my instincts were louder. This wasn't an accident. I turned her arm slightly to document the angle, but something else caught my eye, something much worse. Another bruise. Fainter. On her neck. Not just a handprint. Finger marks. My breath caught. My stomach dropped. Whoever did this didn't just attack her. They tried to choke her. The camera slipped from my fingers and clattered against the floor. And for the first time since joining this hospital, I felt truly afraid. Before the attack, before the hospital lights and the panic, Marvel's world looked nothing like the chaos she was thrown into. It was quieter, slower, full of routines she had perfected over the 2 years she worked in the ward estate, a mansion so large the hallways echoed even when she whispered. Marvel didn't walk through that house like a servant. She moved like someone who understood the rhythm of the place better than anyone. She knew which floorboards creaked, which windows stuck when it rained, which rooms gathered dust fastest, and which of Cashin's suits he favored for meetings on Mondays. She knew all of it, not because she was told to, but because she cared. That was who she was, someone who tried her best even when no one was looking. Every morning, she'd open the curtains of the east wing just in time for the sunrise to spill across the marble floors. The housekeepers used to tease her, saying, "Marvel, you don't get paid extra to love the morning this much." She'd just smile, that soft, patient smile she always had. They didn't know she woke up early because it was the only time the world felt gentle. She'd cook breakfast for the staff before her own shift even started, biscuits with honey butter, or scrambled eggs with herbs from the garden she planted herself. She shared recipes like they were secrets and told stories like they were gifts. But beneath her warmth lived something else. A heaviness she never talked about. A quiet awareness that people often saw her skin before they saw her worth. Some guests at Cashin's mansion wouldn't look her in the eyes. Some staff treated her like she didn't belong, even though she was the one who held everything together. Still, she stayed kind. And Cassian Ward, he noticed. He was never loud or dramatic about his respect. Instead, it showed in smaller things. Asking her opinion on staff meals. Thanking her in front of others. Checking in when she looked tired. He once told her, "This house runs because of you, Marvell. And she laughed, thinking he was joking.
He wasn't.
Her intelligence showed in ways people rarely credited maids for.
She fixed things without being asked. She kept a journal full of poems she never read to anyone.
She taught one of the gardeners to read on her lunch breaks.
She even knew more about Carryin's schedule than his own assistant.
Yet she had dreams no one knew, of going to culinary school, starting a bakery, owning something that belonged fully to her.
She saved every spare dollar in a cookie tin under her bed. She believed that one day, she'd get there. Then everything changed on a Thursday night.
Marvell had stayed late, cleaning the library after an event. The rain had come in heavy sheets, rattling the windows. She was alone in the house. Carryin was at a business dinner. Most staff had gone home early.
She didn't hear footsteps. She didn't hear a voice.
All she felt was a shadow passing behind her before pain exploded across her skull.
Darkness swallowed her.
Back in the present, in the hospital hallway outside the trauma room, Carryin's voice shook with fury as he spoke to the police. "There's footage," he said, each word sharp as a blade. "My mansion has hidden security cameras. The library has one of them."
My heart stopped. There was video of the attack.
The police arrived less than an hour after Marvell was stabilized. Two officers in Navy uniforms stepped into the emergency room hallway with the calm, slow steps of people who didn't believe anything urgent was happening. Their radios crackled softly, but their expressions stayed flat, almost bored. Carryin stood the moment he saw them. He looked like a man fraying at the edges, tie crooked, shirt stained with Marvell's blood, eyes burning with a mix of fear and rage. "She was attacked in my home," he said immediately. "Someone tried to kill her." The officers exchanged a look. A long, heavy one, the kind that said, "Here we go." One of them, Officer Denton, took out a small notepad but didn't write anything down. "Sir," he said in a polite but dismissive tone, "we'll get to your concerns, but first we need to know more about the employee."
A cold wave rolled through me. The employee? Marvell wasn't even a person to him.
Carryin blinked, thrown.
"Her name is Marvell.
She's worked for me for 2 years." "And does she have a history?" the second officer asked. "Any drug use?
Trouble with the law? Domestic partners?"
"You know, things that might explain this kind of situation." "Explain?" Carryin repeated, disbelief twisting his voice. "You think she did this to herself?" The officers didn't answer.
They didn't have to. I stepped closer before I could stop myself.
"She has strangulation bruises," I said. "She came in unconscious with head trauma. You need to investigate this like a real assault." Officer Denton gave me a quick glance, the kind of look men give young women when they want them to stay quiet. "Miss, we'll handle this."
Carryin's jaw clenched so hard I saw the muscle jump. "Marvell is the victim here," he said, voice rising. "She matters. She deserves respect. She deserves justice."
"Of course," the officer responded, but his tone said the opposite. Carryin took a step forward, anger radiating from him. "I have security footage.
Hidden cameras.
There's a recording of what happened."
That finally made the officers straighten a little.
Not because Marvell deserved justice, but because money and surveillance suddenly made the case interesting.
Officer Denton scribbled something on his pad.
"We'll send someone to collect the footage."
Carryin stared at him. "That's it?"
"That's your urgency." "We have other cases tonight," the officer said. "We'll get to it as soon as we can." Carryin's face went red, not with embarrassment, but with fury so sharp it made the air vibrate.
I had never seen a billionaire look powerless before. It made him strangely human.
The officers left just as slowly as they'd arrived, never once looking through the window at Marvell lying unconscious in her hospital bed. When they were gone, silence pooled in the hallway. Carryin sank down on the bench beside me, elbows on his knees. For a moment, he looked older, worn down by grief and anger. I hesitated. "Sir, are you okay?"
He didn't answer right away.
Instead, he leaned closer, lowering his voice to a whisper only I could hear. "Avery," he said, eyes haunted. "This wasn't random. The attacker isn't some stranger." My breath caught. "It's someone inside my company." Carryin didn't speak again for a long moment. He just stared at his hands, still stained with Marvell's dried blood. The hallway's harsh fluorescent lights flickered above us, making shadows dance across his face. For the first time since he'd stormed through the hospital doors, he looked less like a billionaire, and more like a man who had lived through something unbearable. You don't get to my level without stacking up enemies, he said finally, voice low. But this, Marvell, this wasn't business. This was personal. I sat quietly, waiting. Something deep in him was shifting, loosening. Like a door he had kept bolted for decades was beginning to crack open. When I was a kid, Carryin continued, my parents weren't around. Ever. My father was building his empire, and my mother was, somewhere between Paris and pretending I didn't exist. But I had someone who saved me from growing up cold. He swallowed. His eyes glistened. Her name was Eudora. She was my nanny. My family never treated her with respect, but she treated me with love. The kind of love that makes you believe the world still has good people in it. His voice broke for half a second before he forced it steady. She was black. And she faced things in that house she never should have faced. Disrespect. Dismissal. Ignorance. His jaw tightened. Sometimes worse. But she stayed. For me. I felt something twist inside my chest. A truth revealing itself. She died when I was 14, he said softly. Heart failure. She collapsed cleaning the stairs. And when paramedics came, he looked away. My parents told them she wasn't family. Told them not to waste time with questions. They even argued about who would clean the carpet. He wiped his eyes with the back of his sleeve. I swore I'd never let someone around me be treated that way again. Now it made sense. Why he carried Marvell like she was priceless. Why he defended her so fiercely. Why his voice shook every time he said her name. She reminded me of Eudora, Carryin whispered. Her kindness. Her strength. Her way of seeing people even when they tried to be invisible. I respected her. I trusted her. His gaze hardened. And someone used that trust to hurt her. He leaned back, exhaustion pulling at his features. My company is a battlefield. Money, power, contracts. I've dealt with shareholders trying to sabotage me, rivals trying to poach my projects, even family trying to break me. But attacking Marvell. He shook his head. That's a new low. I shivered. The hallway felt colder. What do you think they wanted? I asked quietly. Carryin opened his mouth. Closed it. Then sighed. Maybe leverage. Maybe revenge. Maybe they just hated her because she mattered to me. Before I could respond, a pounding of footsteps echoed down the corridor. One of the hospital's security guards, a tall man with a walkie-talkie bouncing at his hip, rushed toward us, breathless. Mr. Ward, he shouted, voice frantic. Sir, you need to come with me immediately. Carryin stood fast, shoulders tensing. What happened? The guard swallowed hard, eyes wide with panic. Sir, your mansion is on fire. Carryin didn't even wait for the guard to finish the sentence. He sprinted down the hallway toward the exit, panic sharpening every step. I could hear the distant roar of sirens through the glass, fire trucks, police, something else. The kind of sound that makes your stomach fold in half. But just as Carryin reached the sliding doors, a nurse yelled from behind us. We need help in trauma room 3, now. That was Marvell's room. Carryin froze mid-step, caught between two nightmares, his burning home and the woman he refused to lose. He turned slowly, like his body weighed 1,000 pounds. His face carried a terror I had never seen on a man like him. Not on TV, not in business magazines, not even earlier when he burst into the hospital. This was different. This was the fear of losing the last piece of someone he cared about. I ran past him, straight into Marvell's room. Her breathing had grown shallower. The machines hissed and whirred like they were struggling along with her. Sweat clung to her forehead, her lips had gone pale, and her pulse line dipped dangerously low. She's crashing, one of the residents shouted. Bag her. Increase oxygen flow, another ordered. I slipped into position, steadying her head, adjusting the monitor leads, doing everything I had been trained to do, yet feeling utterly helpless. Marvell's chest rose unevenly, like each breath was a cliff she couldn't climb. Through the small window of the room, I saw chaos blooming outside. News vans screeched into the parking lot. Cameramen jumped out before they even stopped rolling. Microphones. Flashing lights. People shouting. Billionaire mansion fire. Is Carryin Ward inside? Who's the injured woman? Was it an inside attack? I felt bile rise in my throat. Marvell wasn't even gone and already the world was circling like vultures. Carryin reappeared at the doorway, torn between running to the fire and staying. His hands shook.
His eyes locked onto Marvel, lying so still she looked carved from stone. Is she? He choked out. We're working on it, I said, though my voice was thinner than a thread. For a moment, the room softened. The yelling faded. The beeping quieted. Marvel's breathing steadied, barely, but enough that the panic dipped. Cassian's shoulders lowered half an inch. My own pulse slowed. For a fragile, trembling second, it seemed like she might make it through. But then, without warning, the monitor emitted a sharp, piercing tone. A single, unbroken note. Flat. Lifeless. Final. Marvel's heart rhythm vanished from the screen. Carryin staggered backward, as if someone had kicked him in the chest. His lips parted in silent denial. His hands reached for the glass, then stopped midair. I felt every hair on my body stand up. No, 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 I whispered, checking the leads, tapping the screen, doing anything my trembling fingers could manage. But the line stayed straight. Cold. Unmoving. The heart monitor had stopped. The flat lines sliced through the room like a blade. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then everything exploded at once. Code blue, one of the residents shouted. The doors flew open. Doctors and nurses poured in, like a storm of scrubs and gloves and sharp, urgent voices. Someone pushed a crash cart beside the bed. Someone else pulled out the defibrillator pads. The room shrank under the weight of panic. My body reacted before my mind could. I grabbed the ambu bag and positioned myself at Marvel's head. Pushing epinephrine. Charging to 120. Clear the airway. Carryin stood behind the glass, both palms pressed against it, his face twisted into something between terror and heartbreak. His shoulders shook. His suit, once flawless, looked rumpled, soaked in sweat, and stained with the life of the woman he was losing. I didn't have the luxury of breaking down. Not now. Marvel, I whispered, squeezing the bag rhythmically, forcing air into her lungs. Stay with us. You don't get to go. Not like this. My hands trembled, but I didn't let them stop. Her chest rose and fell under my control, each breath a promise I refused to break. Charging to 150, clear. Her body jolted violently. Nothing. Flatline. Again, the attending ordered. Don't stop compressions. My heart hammered so fast it felt like it might burst. Sweat gathered at the back of my neck. I counted compressions under my breath, clinging to the rhythm because it was the only thing keeping fear from swallowing me whole. 1, 2, 3, keep breathing. Marvel, 7, 8. The attending checked the monitor. The line stayed straight. Carryin collapsed to his knees in the hallway. Not dramatically, quietly, like the weight of the world finally crushed him. His forehead touched the floor. His fists clenched so tight the veins in his arms bulged. He looked like a man reliving an old trauma he had spent his whole life trying to bury. I blinked hard, forcing myself back into focus. Push another milligram, the attending ordered. Charging 200, clear. Another jolt. Marvel's body arched. And then, a pause. A long, terrifying pause. The kind where the room holds its breath. The kind where even the machines seem to freeze. I stared at the monitor, willing it to move. Willing her to fight. Willing the universe to give her one more chance. Then, a tiny blip. So small I almost thought I imagined it. Then another. Stronger. Then another. Her heartbeat returned. Thin, shaky, but real. Everyone exhaled at once. Even Carryin looked up, hope flickering through the cracks of his grief-heavy expression. Let's stabilize her, the attending said. Good work, everyone. I stepped back, my knees weak, my heart still racing. As the room's chaos shifted into controlled order, I leaned in closer to adjust her oxygen tubing. Her eyelids fluttered, just for a second, like she was fighting her way to the surface of a dark ocean. Then, as soft as a sigh, she breathed out a faint, broken sound. A word. A name. I froze. Her lips parted again, barely moving. But the whisper was unmistakable. Danton. The name hung in my mind like a ghost. Danton. Marvel had whispered it with her last shred of strength, like it was the only truth she could still carry through the pain. I repeated it silently as she drifted back into unconsciousness, her heartbeat steady but fragile. The moment I stepped into the hallway, Carryin was waiting. His eyes were red, his hair disheveled, his composure fractured. He looked at me the way a drowning man looks at the one piece of driftwood left. Did she say anything? He asked. I hesitated. Not because I wanted to keep secrets, but because I wasn't sure if the truth would help or destroy him. She whispered a name, I said carefully. Danton. Carryin's reaction wasn't shock. It was something colder. Something like recognition. He dragged a hand over his face. Danton Hale. You know him? He's my head of operations. His jaw clenched. And one of the few people with full access to my mansion. My stomach tightened. So Marvell had named someone inside Carryin world. Someone he trusted. Someone with proximity. The police were still in the lobby, milling around, questioning the wrong people, asking the wrong things. One of the officers, Detective Granger, approached Carryin again, but his tone was patronizing. Sir, we're trying to piece things together, Granger said. But we need to know if your employee had enemies. I stepped forward before Carryin even breathed in. She's a victim, I snapped. Not a suspect. And she wasn't attacked by some random stranger passing by. She named someone. Granger raised an eyebrow. She's conscious. No, I said. But she spoke. Then it's not admissible. Carryin's voice sharpened with steel. Are you suggesting we ignore it? I'm suggesting, Granger said, that we need evidence, not vague dying declarations. Carryin's whole body tensed. I could feel the anger rolling off him like heat. But before he exploded, I tugged his sleeve subtly. He looked down at me, breath still trembling. Let me help, I whispered. For the first time since this nightmare began, his shoulders eased, just a little. We walked away from the officers and found a small alcove near the elevators where no one could hear us. The fluorescent light above us flickered, matching the shaky rhythm of Carryin's breathing. I can't trust anyone in my company right now, he admitted, his voice low. Not until I know who betrayed me. You trust me? I asked softly. He looked at me with a seriousness that made my chest tighten. You saved her life. You didn't hesitate. And you're the only one who seems to give a damn about the truth. A strange alliance formed in that hallway, born from fear, from anger, from something deeper neither of us wanted to name. I told him everything I remembered about Marvell's whisper. He told me things about Danton, his ambition, his position in the company, his access, his motives. The pieces didn't fit yet, but they were starting to form an outline. As we talked, the air thickened with tension. Something felt wrong. Like eyes were on us. Like secrets crawled in the walls. When I finally stepped away to return to my shift, I reached into my pocket to check the time. My phone buzzed with a new message. Unknown number. No name. No context. Just one line. Stop digging. You're next. My hands were still trembling when I reached Carryin's private waiting room. He was sitting forward on the couch, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor like the tiles held every answer he needed. When I stepped inside, he looked up immediately, like he'd been waiting for me. I got a message, I said, my voice thin and shaky. His eyes sharpened. What kind of message? I held out my phone. He snatched it quicker than I expected, reading the text once, twice, expression darkening like a storm cloud swallowing the sun. Stop digging. You're next, he repeated, jaw tightening. They are threatening a hospital intern now. I swallowed hard. Carryin, someone knows I heard Marvell speak. Someone knows I'm helping you. He stood abruptly, pacing like a caged tiger. I'm done playing nice with the local police. If they won't act, I'll bring in the FBI. I blinked. The FBI. I have contacts, he said. Agents who owe me favors. Resources they can't ignore. I won't let anyone touch you. Or Marvell. His protectiveness was fierce, almost frightening. But my fear wasn't of him. It was of whoever thought I needed to be warned. Before either of us could say more, 2 hospital administrators hurried into the room. Their badges glinted under the lights. Their smiles were stiff and terrified. Mr. Rourke, the woman said, breathless. We've been informed of potential legal complications. Her eyes darted to me like I was trouble she wished she could erase. We're doing everything we can to assist law enforcement. Carryin crossed his arms. Interesting. Because law enforcement seems more interested in investigating my maid than the man who nearly killed her. The administrators exchanged nervous glances. Well, these matters can be delicate, the man stammered. We wouldn't want to jeopardize your relationship with the hospital. There it was. The real fear. If Carryin pulled his donations, the hospital would collapse financially. They needed him quiet, cooperative, grateful. But tonight, Carryin wasn't any of those things. "You're worried about money," he said, voice low with cold fury. "I'm worried about a woman who was brutally attacked and nearly died under your roof." "We understand," the woman lied. "We'll make sure security is increased." "Too late," I said quietly. "I'm already getting threats." The administrators froze. Carryin turned to them with a glare that could have cracked the floor. "If anything happens to her, I'll make sure your jobs are the least of your worries." The administrators backed out of the room so fast they nearly tripped over each other. The moment they left, the air grew heavier. Carryin rubbed his temples. I sank into a chair, trying to slow my breath. "Maybe the message was just meant to scare me," I whispered. Carryin stopped pacing. "Or it was meant to test how far we've come. Threats escalate. They don't just disappear." A shiver ran down my spine. We agreed to keep everything quiet for now. No sudden moves. No tipping off whoever was watching. Hours later, after my shift ended, I walked out into the cold night air. The parking lot was nearly empty, the lights flickering. My steps grew slower as I approached my old silver Toyota. Something was wrong. All 4 tires, flattened completely. Not from potholes. Not from age. Slashed. Deliberately. I felt my blood turn to ice. Someone wasn't just watching me. They were here. And they wanted me to know it. When I stepped into Marvel's room the next morning, dawn light was barely spilling through the blinds. The world was quiet, still half asleep. Machines hummed softly. Monitors blinked with steady rhythms. And then I heard it. A small, strained whisper. "Avery?" My heart jumped. Marvel's eyes were open, glossy, exhausted, but awake. I rushed to her side, gently holding her hand. "You're safe," I whispered. "You're in the hospital. Carryin brought you here. You made it." Her lower lip trembled. She tried to sit up, but the pain forced her back down with a soft gasp. "No, don't move," I said quickly. "Just breathe. You're okay." A single tear slid down her cheek. Then another. Soon her whole face was trembling with silent sobs. "Oh, honey," I murmured, brushing her hair back. "You're not alone." She struggled to speak. Her throat was raw, her voice thin like paper tearing. He was someone I trusted." My breath caught. "Danton," I whispered. Her eyes widened, fear flashing through them. She nodded faintly. "He helped me for years," she said, every word strained. "He pretended to protect me. Acted kind when the others weren't." She swallowed hard, wincing. "But it changed. When Carryin promoted me to oversee the household staff, when he praised my work, some people didn't like it." Her jaw clenched, a flash of old humiliation crossing her face. There was jealousy. Quiet hatred. The kind that hides behind nice smiles. I squeezed her hand gently. "You didn't deserve any of that." She shook her head slowly, tears dripping down the pillow. "I thought, if I worked twice as hard, they'd respect me. But no matter what I did, someone always found a way to remind me who they thought I was." Marvel. My chest ached for her. She wasn't talking just about the night she was attacked. She was talking about a lifetime. About the exhaustion of existing in spaces that pretended to welcome her while quietly crushing her spirit. She took a shaky breath. "He cornered me," she said. "Said I didn't know my place anymore. That Carryin trusted me too much. That I made him look incompetent." Her fingers tightened weakly around mine. "And then he said something else," she whispered, voice trembling. "He said, I should have known better than to rise above where I belonged." A hot, burning anger rose in my throat. I fought to keep my voice soft for her sake. "You did nothing wrong," I said. "Nothing. What he did was evil." Her breathing grew uneven. Her eyelids fluttered. The rise and fall of her chest became shaky. "Do you want me to get Carryin?" I asked. But she shook her head faintly. "Not yet. I'm not ready to see him cry." Even in her pain, she was thinking of someone else. That was who Marvel was, kind to the end. I brushed her hand again and smiled softly. "Rest. We'll protect you now." She nodded weakly, letting her eyes drift shut. For a moment, peace filled the room. A fragile calm, like the air before a storm. Then, the lights flickered. The monitor beeped once, then cut out. The entire hospital floor plunged into darkness. A scream echoed down the hallway. Someone had cut the power. Darkness swallowed the hallway so completely that for a second I forgot how to breathe. A chorus of panicked voices rose from nearby rooms, patients shouting, nurses fumbling for flashlights, machines powering down with unsettling beeps that echoed like dying breaths. My heart slammed against my ribs. Power outages weren't uncommon. But intentional ones, during an attempted murder investigation? Never. The emergency generators kicked in a moment later, but they sputtered instead of humming to life. The lights flickered, casting sickly yellow waves across the corridor before dimming again like the hospital itself was struggling to stay conscious. I yanked my phone from my pocket and clicked on the flashlight. A thin beam cut through the gloom. "Everyone stay calm," someone shouted down the hall. But calm was impossible. The air felt thick. Too still. Like the walls were holding their breath. I rushed into the first patient room and checked vitals manually. Alarms were silent. Monitors were down. Nurses scrambled with manual blood pressure cuffs and oxygen tanks. "Go. Go. Keep them stable," the charge nurse barked. I sprinted from one room to another, my hands shaking as I adjusted oxygen flow for an elderly man gasping weakly in bed. His eyes locked onto mine, full of fear. "It's okay," I whispered. "We've got you. I promise." When he settled, I bolted back into the hallway. I couldn't stop thinking about Marvell, alone, injured, helpless. And Danton. If he was inside the building. A surge of panic shot through me. I ran toward the security desk near the elevator bank. 2 officers were hunched over the monitors, backup screens connected to a small generator independent from the main power grid. The images were grainy, black and white, flickering. "What's happening?" I demanded. "Someone hit the main fuse bank," one officer muttered, his voice shaking. "This wasn't an accident." I leaned over the monitors. Most cameras were dead. But one, near the west stairwell, showed movement. A figure in a black hood, face covered by a mask, slipping through the stairway door like a shadow come alive. My pulse spiked. "Who is that?" I whispered. "We don't know," the officer said. "Could be the same person who threatened you. Could be someone trying to take advantage of the blackout." The masked figure paused at the bottom of the stairs, pulled out something, looked like a key card, and swiped into a restricted area. My stomach churned. "Zoom in," I said. The officer hesitated. "It'll make the picture even grainier." "Just do it." He zoomed. The figure's outline sharpened only slightly, but enough to see the broad shoulders, the confident stride, the way he moved like he knew every corner of the building. My throat tightened. "Where does that hallway lead?" I asked. The officers pulled up a map. "West Wing," the older one said. "Only ICU and long-term recovery rooms are down there." My blood ran cold. Marvell's room was in the West Wing. I stepped back, air rushing from my lungs. "He's heading right toward her," I whispered. Both officers turned sharply, eyes wide. "Are you sure?" one asked. But I didn't wait to answer. I was already running. Down the hallway, past terrified patients, past failing lights and flickering shadows. Running toward Marvell. And running straight toward the masked figure who wanted her silenced. The hallway stretched ahead of me like a tunnel carved from fear. My shoes slapped the floor, the emergency lights flickering overhead like dying stars. Every shadow looked like it might leap out and attack. Every sound made my heart slam against my ribs. As I rounded the corner toward the West Wing, a familiar figure appeared. Carryin, breathless, wild-eyed, charging straight toward me. "Avery," he shouted. Security called me. They saw someone heading for Marvell's room. "We have to get there now." I yelled back. We didn't waste another breath. We sprinted together down the hallway, his strides long and desperate, mine fast and frantic. The 2 of us burst into the West Wing at the same time. The emergency light above Marvell's door blinked weakly, casting the hall in a ghostly, pulsing glow. Carryin grabbed the handle, locked. He slammed his shoulder into it with a guttural sound, rattling the frame. "Move," he shouted. I stepped back as he rammed his shoulder again, fury and terror fueling him. On the 3rd slam, the door burst open, crashing so hard against the wall that the nurses nearby screamed. We rushed in. Marvell lay trembling in her bed, eyes wide with terror but alive. Alive. "Was someone in here?" I whispered, taking her hand. She nodded a tiny, jerky motion.
He stood right where you're standing. My blood froze. Carryin spun toward the opposite door, the one leading to the emergency stairwell. He's still here. And then we heard it, footsteps pounding down the stairs behind the door.
Carryin lunged for it.
I was right behind him. We flung it open, the stairwell cold and echoing like a concrete throat. A dark figure, mask, hood, gloves, was flying down the steps.
Hey!
Carryin roared, voice booming through the stairwell.
The figure didn't slow.
Carryin took off, leaping down 2 steps at a time. I followed, gripping the railing so I wouldn't tumble. Stop!
Carryin yelled.
Danton, stop. The masked figure paused for a split second, just enough for Carryin to lunge. He grabbed the attacker's sleeve, yanking him backward with raw strength. The masked man stumbled, slamming into the wall, but not enough to fall. Let me see your face.
Carryin bellowed.
The figure twisted violently, almost throwing Carryin off balance. They wrestled for a moment, bodies colliding with the railing. Carryin reached for the mask, but the attacker jerked away and shoved him hard. Carryin stumbled back up the steps, and the figure vaulted down the remaining stairs, disappearing into the emergency exit door below. Carryin sprinted after him. But when we reached the bottom, the outside door was swinging open to the night.
The figure had vanished into darkness.
Security swarmed seconds later, too late. Carryin slammed his fist against the wall. The sound echoed through the stairwell like a gunshot. We had him, he whispered, voice breaking. We had him. We'll get him, I said, trying to steady my breath. We're closer than ever. But inside, I wasn't sure. Whoever this person was, they were fast.
They were careful.
They knew the hospital better than they should. Minutes later, police arrived to lift fingerprints and assess the scene. I followed them back to Marvel's room, heart still pounding. One of the officers stepped out holding something between gloved fingers. A note, he said grimly, found taped under her pillow.
My stomach flipped.
He handed it to me, and I unfolded it with trembling hands.
Black ink. Sharp handwriting. Short. Cruel. She should have stayed silent.
Sleep was impossible after the attack. My mind kept replaying the chase, the mask, the note, the terror in Marvel's eyes. By sunrise, the hospital had power restored, but the unease clung to every corner like a fog that refused to lift.
I sat in the staff lounge with a notebook in front of me.
My hands were cold. My coffee untouched. Every clue we had was scribbled down, names, moments, suspicions. And every line kept circling back to the same person.
Danton Hale. But something didn't add up.
If Danton wanted Marvel silenced, why now? Why so violently? Why take such huge risks when Carryin was already suspicious? There had to be more underneath it, something deeper, something personal. Carryin found me an hour later. He looked exhausted, like he hadn't slept at all. His tie was loosened, his shirt wrinkled, his eyes haunted.
Avery, he said quietly, sitting beside me. Marvel wants to talk when she wakes again. She's ready to tell everything.
Good, I said. Because I'm starting to see patterns.
He raised an eyebrow. I flipped the notebook toward him.
Your company, I began. Who would gain from destroying your reputation? Who would risk jail time just to hurt someone you care about?
Carryin's jaw flexed.
Competitors.
A few board members. My brother, he muttered. Then he shook his head. But none of them would attack Marvel. That's ruthless.
Personal. Unless it wasn't about her, I said softly.
Maybe she knew something.
Maybe she saw something. Carryin leaned back, rubbing the bridge of his nose.
There have been issues. Internal tensions.
Staff at the mansion resenting her authority.
Rumors spread by jealous people.
And Danton, he was furious when I promoted her.
Why? I asked.
Because he thought he deserved it, Carryin said bitterly.
He's always wanted more power.
More control. There it was again, control. A man feeling threatened by a woman rising. What about inside your company? I pressed. Any scandals?
Affairs?
Anything people might want hidden?
Carryin hesitated.
That alone told me enough. There have been complications, he admitted. A few executives crossing lines. Some paying off employees to keep quiet.
And Marvel?
I asked. Was she connected to any of that?
She overheard things, he said. Nothing she meant to, but she heard. She always heard everything. A shiver ran through me. Information could be dangerous. A maid who listened could become a threat without even knowing why. As Carryin talked, pieces of the puzzle rearranged themselves. Jealousy, corporate ambition, fear of exposure, old resentments, new power shifts. All roads still led to Danton, but maybe he wasn't alone. Maybe someone else had pushed him. I excused myself to take a breath, slipping into an empty office. My phone buzzed with new notifications, and I scrolled through missed calls and old voicemails, just to clear the clutter in my mind. Then I saw it. A voicemail from Marvell. Timestamped 2 nights before the attack. Marked as deleted. My heart stumbled. I hit restore, then play. The message crackled. Static, a shaky breath, then Marvell's voice, trembling and terrified. Carryin, it's me. I need you to call me back. Please. I think something's wrong. Danton, he said things today. He's angry.
He said I shouldn't trust you, Anne, and that I talk too much.
A soft sob.
Please, protect him from himself.
I don't know what he'll do. I'm scared. My skin froze. Not protect me. Not protect her. Protect him. Danton. The voicemail ended with a click that echoed down my spine. I stood there, breath trapped in my chest. Marvell wasn't just afraid of Danton. She believed Danton needed to be protected from his own darkness. And that meant whatever had happened was far more complicated than we thought. Carryin listened to the voicemail 3 times. The first time, he went still. The second time, his hands began to shake. The third time, something inside him cracked. He stood there in the small office, staring at the wall as if the world had just tilted sideways. His breath came shallow and uneven. His eyes looked hollow, like the light inside him had been blown out. Carryin, I said quietly. But he didn't answer. He pressed both hands against the table, bowing his head like the weight of history had finally collapsed onto his shoulders. I should have seen it, he whispered.
I should have known. I stepped closer.
Known what? His voice broke in the middle, raw and exposed.
That it was him.
Danton. You didn't know, I said gently.
I did know, he snapped, not at me, but at himself. I ignored every red flag because I didn't want to believe it. He turned, leaning against the wall like he needed it to stay upright. Danton isn't just my CFO, he said. He's my childhood friend. We grew up together in the same broken neighborhood. Shared every dream, every failure.
I pulled him into the company.
I trusted him with everything.
And Marvell? I asked softly. She was loyal, he whispered. She kept the mansion running. She protected the secrets he wanted hidden. She saw too much.
And Danton always hated that I listened to her more than him. A pain-filled laugh escaped his throat.
He once joked that my maid had more influence than my CFO. I thought he was being dramatic. Turns out he meant every word.
I stepped beside him, letting the silence stretch.
He didn't move away.
Carryin, I said, you can't blame yourself for another man's cruelty.
But I do, he breathed. Because I let him close. I gave him power.
And he used it to hurt the only people who ever believed in me.
His voice cracked. It wasn't the polished tone of a billionaire anymore. It was the wounded voice of a man betrayed by someone he once called family.
He rubbed a hand over his face, trying, and failing, to hide the tears in his eyes.
Marvell protected me, he said.
And I failed to protect her.
I touched his arm.
A gentle, steadying gesture.
You didn't fail. You acted the moment you knew. And she's still alive because of you.
For a moment, he let himself lean into the comfort. Just a second of human closeness in a world collapsing around him. But then he stepped back, wiping his face roughly. I can't trust anyone anymore, he whispered. Except maybe you.
The words hit hard. Honest. Vulnerable. Too heavy.
And yet, a small part of me wondered, was I letting him trust me too easily?
Was I in deeper than I realized?
Before I could respond, the door creaked open. A nurse poked her head inside, nervous. Mr. Rourke, someone's here to see you.
We both straightened. Who? Carryin asked.
The nurse hesitated, eyes flicking between us. He says he's your CFO. Carryin's face drained of color. And then, standing behind the nurse, stepping slowly into the hallway with a polite, cheerful smile.
Was Danton Hale. Perfect suit. Perfect posture. Perfect mask.
Carryin, he said warmly. Heard there was some trouble. Danton entered the hallway like he owned it. His steps were calm, measured, elegant, nothing like the frantic, masked figure I had chased through the stairwell. Yet something in his smile made my skin crawl.
It was too smooth. Too controlled.
A smile crafted by someone who had practiced deception until it became an art.
Carryin stiffened beside me. Danton, he said carefully. You shouldn't be here.
Danton's brows lifted in a show of practiced confusion.
Why not? My friend is dealing with a crisis.
I came to help.
Help. The word sounded poisonous in his mouth.
I watched Carryin closely. The betrayal he felt in Chapter 14 was brewing into suspicion. Dark, sharp suspicion. But Danton kept his tone light, almost playful. Heard the hospital had a power outage last night, Danton said, glancing around. You know, Cass, you should really invest in a better generator for them. They rely on you, after all.
Carryin didn't answer. He only stared.
Something in Danton's eyes flickered. Annoyance? Impatience? Then he refocused. I also heard Marvell was hurt, Danton added, lowering his voice.
Thought I should check on her.
She always liked me. Every muscle in my body tightened. Carryin stepped slightly in front of me, a subconscious protective move.
Marvell is resting, he said. She doesn't need more stress.
Danton nodded slowly, thoughtfully.
Of course. Of course. But surely I can at least stop by the room.
Say I'm thinking of her.
He took a step toward the west wing.
I stepped directly into his path before Carryin could. She can't have visitors right now. Danton blinked at me, and for the first time his smile slipped, just a fraction. You must be the intern Carryin mentioned.
Carryin hadn't mentioned me to him. That meant Danton had been watching. Listening. Observing.
I'm Avery, I said. And I'm responsible for her care right now. Danton looked me up and down, not in admiration, not in curiosity, but in calculation. His eyes were cold, clinical,
like he was assessing a threat.
A hospital intern, he murmured. Interesting how involved you've become. She saved Marvell's life, Carryin snapped. Danton smiled again.
How noble. He tried to sidestep me. I moved again, blocking him. I said no. Danton's jaw twitched. A tiny, controlled muscle. A crack in the mask.
The hallway felt colder.
Tighter. Like the walls were listening.
It's fine, Danton said finally, raising his hands in fake surrender. I can wait.
His eyes slid to Carryin.
We all want what's best for her, right? He turned, but not before casting one last lingering look at Marvell's closed door. A look too intent, too hungry, too aware. Carryin exhaled shakily once he was out of sight. You saw it, I whispered. You saw how he looked. Carryin nodded, throat tight. His dangerous. We stayed outside Marvell's room for nearly an hour, guarding the door, waiting for her to wake again. The air felt thick, every second stretching like a wire ready to snap.
Then, inside the room, a soft moan. Carryin and I rushed in. Marvell's eyes fluttered open fully this time.
Her gaze was clearer, pained but aware.
She saw Carryin. Then me. Her lips parted.
Marvell, Carryin said gently, you're safe. She swallowed, breath shaky. He came back, didn't he?
I froze.
Carryin leaned closer.
Who?
Who hurt you?
Her eyes watered. Her voice was barely audible. It was a trembling breath.
Her hand weakly reached toward Carryin.
It was Danton.
Carryin didn't wait for security.
He didn't wait for me.
He didn't wait for the doctors, still tending to Marvell. He stormed down the hallway with a kind of fury I had never seen in a human being. Quiet, razor-focused, lethal. The kind of rage born not from anger, but heartbreak. Carryin, wait. I called, chasing after him. But he was already crossing the corridor toward the waiting area where Danton sat casually flipping through a magazine, as if he hadn't just been named by a nearly dying woman. Carryin grabbed the magazine from his hands and slammed it onto the floor. Danton looked up slowly.
So, he said.
She woke up. The way he said it, casual, careless, unafraid, made my stomach twist.
Carryin didn't speak at first. His breath shook. His fists trembled.
You hurt her.
Danton tilted his head.
You're going to want to be careful with accusations like that.
Marvell named you, Carryin growled.
She said your name.
Danton smiled.
A small, bitter curl of lips.
Of course she did. Something snapped in Carryin.
He lunged, grabbing Danton by the collar and slamming him against the wall so hard the picture frames rattled.
Nurses gasped. A visitor screamed. Security began rushing toward them.
Why? Carryin demanded, voice cracking. Why would you do this?
Danton laughed, not loudly, not dramatically. Softly, like he found Carryin's pain amusing.
You really want to know?
Danton said.
Yes,
Carryin spat.
Because she didn't belong here.
My blood turned to ice.
Danton's eyes shifted to me, then back to Carryin.
She didn't belong in your home. In your world. In your inner circle. You kept treating her like she mattered.
Like she was family. Carryin's grip tightened. She is family.
Danton's face twisted. She was a maid, Carryin. A nobody.
Someone you elevated because she reminded you of your precious nanny, another woman who didn't belong. The racism in his voice was unmistakable.
Cold. Rotten.
Long buried, now erupting. Carryin looked physically ill. You watched me build everything, he whispered. You were supposed to be my friend.
Danton's smile sharpened.
I was. Until you started replacing me with her. At that moment, security finally reached them, pulling Carryin back while pinning Danton's arms behind him.
Danton didn't fight. He didn't shout. He simply let himself be held with an eerie calm.
I didn't mean to hit her that hard, he added, almost conversationally.
But she threatened to expose me to you.
And we couldn't have that, could we?
Carryin stiffened, horrified.
I stepped directly between them, my voice shaking. You tried to kill her.
Danton shrugged.
Security began cuffing him, rougher now that they understood.
The nurses watched in wide-eyed silence. The air was sharp, electric. Then the hallway doors burst open.
A man in a $1,000 suit strode in, flanked by two associates. My client, he announced loudly, is being unlawfully detained.
Carryin's head snapped toward him.
What? The lawyer lifted a stack of papers. There is no admissible evidence tying Mr. Danton Voss to any assault.
No camera footage. No eyewitness.
And the victim's statements, given under medication, are considered unreliable.
He smiled coolly.
Effective immediately, he is being released.
Security froze. Carryin cursed.
And Danton looked directly at me and smiled. After Danton walked out of the hospital under the protective wing of his smug attorney, the halls felt colder.
Nurses whispered.
Patients sensed the tension. Carryin locked himself in a family room, hands buried in his hair, shoulders shaking.
I wanted to comfort him. But I had work to do.
Because if no one else was going to protect Marvell, then I would. I returned to Marvell's room, where she slept under dim lights, her breathing still fragile. Her phone, cracked from the night of the attack, lay in a plastic evidence bag on the counter.
The police hadn't even bothered to open it yet.
Probably too busy questioning Marvell about her background again. I gently lifted the phone, slipped on gloves, and powered it on. The screen flickered, glitching, but it worked. Her messages were full of reminders, buying groceries, picking up Carryin's shirts, sending birthday gifts to her own family. Nothing suspicious. Her photos were of sunsets over the mansion grounds, flowers she planted, handwritten recipes she invented in the kitchen when the chefs let her experiment. She lived her life with a softness the world didn't always return. But her voice memos, that was where everything changed. The first recording was short. Just Marvell breathing shakily and saying, "Stay away from me." The next one was longer. A deep voice, cold, cruel, unmistakable, filled the room.
Danton. I told you to keep quiet, he said.
You don't get to run to Carryin. You're lucky he lets you breathe the same air. Marvell whispered something like, I'm not afraid of you.
A slap cracked through the recording.
I flinched. Danton's voice returned, lower now. You think he'll choose you over me? Over his oldest friend?
A pause.
Then the most chilling part, if you open your mouth again, I'll make you disappear.
I covered my mouth, trying not to cry.
The recording wasn't just evidence, it was her fear, trapped in audio form. It was her begging for help in the only way she could.
I walked straight to Carryin.
He lifted his head when I entered, eyes red. I failed her. Not yet, I said, placing the phone in his hands.
She saved herself.
She recorded him. Carryin's expression hardened, a fire lighting behind his grief. This is enough to bury him. Then we fight, I said. For the first time in hours, Carryin nodded like a man reclaiming his spine.
I'll bring in federal investigators.
I'll get private security for Marvell.
He didn't finish. A scream cut through the hallway. We bolted.
The closer we got to Marvell's room, the more frantic the noise became. Shouts, running footsteps, alarms chiming.
My stomach dropped.
The door to her room was wide open, swinging slightly like someone had burst through it. A nurse stood frozen inside, hands shaking, eyes wide with horror. What happened?
I demanded. The nurse pointed with a trembling finger toward Marvell's bed.
Someone had pulled the curtain closed around it.
From behind it came a sound, not Marvell. Not a noise.
A heavy, controlled breathing.
Someone was in the room with her.
Carryin didn't hesitate. He tore the curtain open with a violent rip. And there he was.
Danton. Still wearing the same smug suit.
Still smelling of arrogance and entitlement. But now his face was twisted with something new, desperation. He stood over Marvell's fragile body, one gloved hand inches from her foreline, fingers poised to rip it out. His other hand gripped the bed rail so tightly his knuckles blanched.
Marvell's eyes were wide with terror.
Danton spun toward us. She can talk now, he hissed. And when she talks, I lose everything.
Carryin lunged.
The sound of their collision was loud enough to shake the monitors. They slammed into the floor, rolling, punching, kicking, Carryin fueled by fear and heartbreak, Danton fueled by pure, cornered rage.
Nurses screamed and scrambled out of the room.
I ran to Marvell, shielding her with my body as the two men crashed into the walls behind us. Carryin, stop!
I shouted, but he didn't hear me.
He grabbed Danton by the shirt and slammed him against the cabinet. Medical supplies crashed to the ground.
Danton fought back harder than I expected.
He landed a punch to Carryi's ribs and another to his jaw. Carryin stumbled but didn't fall. You ruin everything you touch.
Danton snarled.
You tried to kill her.
Carryin roared back.
She was going to expose me.
I shoved the emergency call button.
Security was already sprinting down the hall. Police followed behind them, guns drawn but lowered, finally taking this nightmare seriously. Carryin tackled Danton again, pinning him to the floor.
This time he didn't let go.
He pressed his knees into Danton's shoulders, breathing hard, fists trembling above Danton's face. You ever come near her again, Carryin panted, I will make sure you never see the sun. Danton spit blood onto Carryi's shirt.
You're too late. The board already knows. They know everything.
What board?
Carryin growled. But Danton only smiled.
Police officers rushed in, prying Carryin off of him. Two officers cuffed Danton and lifted him to his feet. Even restrained, he seemed to radiate venom. You're done, one officer snapped at him.
Danton shrugged.
Maybe. I turned back to Marvell, checking her vitals. Her pulse raced, her hands trembling.
You're safe, I whispered. We've got you.
He's going away for a long time. I knew he'd come, she whispered through tears.
I knew.
Her voice broke, but she was alive.
Awake. Safe, at least for this moment.
Carryin stumbled to her bedside, bruised and shaking.
I'm so sorry, he whispered.
Marvell squeezed his hand gently, forgiving him in a way that made my heart ache. Then, from the hallway, Danton's voice erupted, raw, furious, unhinged. The police were dragging him toward the exit when he twisted around and screamed. Tell them the truth, Carryin. The entire hallway froze. Carryi's face went pale.
Marvell's hand slipped from his. My stomach dropped.
What truth? Carryin didn't speak at first.
He didn't even look up.
He stood beside Marvell's bed with his shoulders curled inward, his hands shaking at his sides, eyes fixed on the floor like he was staring into a past he'd spent years burying. The words Danton screamed echoed through the hallway, bouncing off sterile walls, refusing to fade.
Tell them the truth, Carryin.
I watched him inhale shakily, like dragging air into his lungs physically hurt. Marvell looked at him with a mixture of worry and tenderness, like she already knew.
And maybe she did. Carryin finally sank into the chair beside her bed. His voice was barely audible.
I never told anyone because people don't understand love that isn't the kind they expect. I stepped closer. Carryin, whatever this is, just say it. We need the truth. His eyes lifted to mine, and for the first time since he ran into the hospital carrying Marvel's body, I saw the frightened boy inside him. When I was 7, he began, voice trembling, I almost died. The room went still. My parents were never home, they left me with staff, tutors, guards. But my nanny, a black woman named Lorena, she was the only mother I ever knew. His throat tightened. One night the house caught fire. Everyone ran. Everyone left me in that room. Marvel reached out, resting her hand over his. She didn't. Carryin nodded slowly, tears finally escaping. Lorena ran back in. She wrapped me in a blanket and held me so tight I couldn't breathe. His voice cracked. She saved me. She suffered burns she never fully recovered from. But she said she'd do it again. He wiped his face, embarrassed. She died when I was 15. I never got to repay her. My chest tightened. Marvel reminded you of her, I whispered. He nodded. Not because of her race, though people always assumed that. But because of her heart. Her calm. Her way of carrying people's burdens like they were feathers. He swallowed. Marvel wasn't just an employee. She was the closest thing to family I had left. I protected her because she once protected me, just like Lorena did. Marvel squeezed his hand gently. You always saw me, Carryin. That was enough. He shook his head. Not enough. Not anymore. I should have told you both. I should have told the world. Maybe then Danton wouldn't have. You are not responsible for his hate, I said firmly. You don't owe him your guilt. For a moment, the air softened. The heart monitor beeped steadily. Carryin breathed easier. Marvel lay back against her pillows, eyes heavy, but calm for the first time since she woke. It felt like healing. But healing never lasts long in stories like ours. Marvel turned her head toward me, her voice suddenly urgent. Avery, I need to speak with you. Carryin stood. Should I leave? She nodded. Please. Just for a moment. He hesitated, kissed her forehead, then quietly stepped out. As soon as he was gone, Marvel gripped my wrist, weak, trembling, desperate. Her voice dropped to a whisper that chilled me straight through. Avery, there's something I never told Carryin. And he can never hear it from me. Marvel's grip was weak but urgent, her fingers trembling against my skin. Her eyes, still glossy from pain and medication, held a depth I hadn't seen before. A depth that felt like history. Avery, she whispered, you remind me of someone I once knew. Someone I loved like a sister. I leaned closer. Who? She swallowed hard. Your mama. My breath caught. My heartbeat stumbled. My mother? You knew her? Marvel nodded softly. We worked together when we were young. Long before she met your father. Long before she escaped. We were maids in a house in Georgia. A rich family. A cruel one. The world around me seemed to dim. I could almost hear echoes of my mother's voice, gentle, careful, never discussing her past. She never talked about that, I whispered. She didn't want that darkness to follow her, Marvel said. But I remember her. The way she used to hum while she worked. The way she protected us younger girls from the men who thought we were invisible. A tear slid down her cheek. Your mama saved my life. More than once. Emotion tightened my throat. Why didn't you say something earlier? Marvel smiled faintly. I didn't know who you were at first. I just knew you had her spirit. Her kindness. That same fire under your quiet. She paused, breath catching. And when I heard your last name, I knew this wasn't an accident. Our paths crossed for a reason. The room felt sacred. Haunted. Beautiful. Marvel squeezed my hand harder, using the last of her strength. Promise me you'll keep that kindness, Avery. It's rare. It's brave. It's the kind of kindness that saves people. Carryin, me, so many others. My tears finally fell. I promise. She exhaled softly, as if relieved. And tell your mama. I remember her. I thank her. And I love her. Her hand slipped slowly from mine, not in death, but in deep exhaustion. She drifted into steady, peaceful sleep. I sat there for several minutes, holding her hand gently, absorbing the weight of her confession. The weight of destiny. When I finally stepped into the hallway, Carryin was waiting.
His eyes searched mine instantly. Is she all right?
She will be, I said.
And so will you.
He nodded, but his voice was shaky when he spoke again. Avery, you saved her.
You saved both of us.
I want to repay you. You don't have to. I do.
His tone softened.
Let me help you the way she helped me. The way you helped her.
He pulled a folded document from his jacket.
A letter of sponsorship, full medical school tuition, living stipend, and a guaranteed residency placement at one of his funded hospitals.
My knees nearly buckled.
Carryin, this is a thank you, he whispered, and a promise that good people will never go unnoticed again.
Tears blurred my sight.
Later, as I walked outside, the morning sun rising over the hospital's worn brick, I realized the story wasn't about billionaires or tragedy or revenge.
It was about kindness. The quiet kind. The kind the world underestimates.
And so I spoke to the camera of my mind, the future listener, the viewer, the stranger who might need the reminder. Kindness isn't weakness. It is the power that saves lives. If this story touched your heart, like, subscribe, and follow, because more stories are waiting to be told.